full god Seth. Primary literature overview. Alternative interpretations of the nature of Seth. Parr 1. As a rule, the nature of Seth is defined as troublesome, violent and noisy. However, there are instances where his character is portrayed in a different light. The Chester Beatty Papyrus 1 includes a version of the contending of Horus and Seth, which has the tale of a boat race between Horus and Seth. In Seth as a full goetic presence, the idea that Seth was a gullible character who was tricked by Horus into losing the boat race between them. In describing the vessel to be used in the race, the specific expression used by Seth could be interpreted as either a transport vessel for stone, or a transport vessel of stone. Horus' interpretation of the first meaning leads him to construct a wooden vessel, but to fool Seth into believing it was a vessel of stone, he then covered with it with plaster to replicate stone, while Seth takes the second meaning and constructs a stone vessel, which promptly sank, so losing him the race. The pun employed in the description of the vessel is used to demonstrate the intellect of Horus while portraying Seth as a fool. However, an alternative interpretation of the myth can be construed from the viewpoint of the supporters of Seth. It can be construed that Seth had meant the boats to be constructed of stone, or why did Horus, having constructed a boat of cedar, would then feel the need to disguise it with plaster to look like stone? Rather than making Seth look a fool, it could be presenting Horus as devious and an individual who would resort to cheating to ensure he was victorious. An alternative view of the nature of Seth was proposed by Teveld in the Egyptian god Seth as a trickster, where he presents a comparison of the character of Seth with that of the complex phenomenon of the trickster deity that occurs in primitive cultures. He proposes that despite having 5 traits in common with the trickster, namely disorderly, uncivilized, a murderer, a homosexual and monster slayer, Seth is not exclusively a trickster, as he was worshipped as a god of a city or a nome. However, he concludes that no further comparisons can be made until a phenomenology of the trickster is composed. What is questionable is Teveld's assertion that a tale of a trickster can be perceived in the description of Seth's murder of Osiris in Plutarch's De Oside et Osiride. Composed in the 2nd century AD, Plutarch's De Oside et Osiride was written in Greek, being intended for a Roman and Greek audience. Consequently, the presentation of the narrative was influenced by the conventions of classical Greek myths, which contain a number of tricksters such as Dionysus, Heracles, Hermes and Prometheus, and so would have, consciously or unconsciously, prejudiced Plutarch's interpretation of Seth's role in the murder of Osiris. The motivation for the murder of his brother Osiris by Seth is normally considered to be one of jealousy of his kingship and a way of taking over the throne. However, there is an alternative reason. In Seth ist ihm recht, Osiris ist ihm unrecht. Von Leven proposes a paradigm on local Seth worship and the Seth worshippers' version of the Osiris myth. The title of the article can be construed in the legal sense, as Seth is in the right, Osiris is in the wrong. This immediately sets the tone that, unlike the usual Egyptian religious texts, Osiris is presented as the villain and perpetrator of a misdemeanor rather than the usual suspect, Seth. Eve,